complete rhythm sections, because a lot, I love the sound of especially that 50s jazz guitar sound, 60s jazz guitar sound. And you would, so I would start seeking out, I would start looking at the back of, while I was looking, I would look for first like the Rudy Van Gelder remaster CDs, and then see who was playing and in what combination. And then I would start picking things up on that, and loved, modern jazz quartets. So then I would look and see where Milt Jackson was playing, what Milt Jackson was playing on, all that
More
kind of thing.
Connect the dots.
Yeah, all that sort of thing. And then hearing, but I came to favor the albums like, I think it's Paul Chambers' Bass on Top. Like anything that put a spotlight, or even Jimmy Smith playing, organ as a lead instrument, things that don't traditionally feature heavy in a setting, whether solo or at the fore. And so hearing Current's Constellations with that just bass, drums, and two guitar sound is fantastic. It's one of the
thanks.
I absolutely love that combination. And you were saying that you and Julian just wanted to try out what your sound was with the rhythm section. How did you sort of like? I mean,
because we started out with this duo, which we still want to persist doing as much as we can. It's very hard to schedule each other. Certainly, I mean, God, what it took to get this tour together. We had to start so early to try to plan this, but really we think of what we do as mostly one big guitar. So it's less about soloing and more about this kind of conversation that we have going as improvisers. And I guess we kind of wanted to see if we could make that work with a rhythm section. And it becomes a little bit more proscribed as to what our roles are with the rhythm section. And I think it was a challenge at first. And I wasn't sure it was working, to be honest, and what kind of material we should be playing in order to manifest that dialogue, that conversation, that chemistry that we feel we have as a duo. Sometimes I think the best thing to do would have been not to write any songs and just improvise the whole time and just let the rhythm section figure out what they want to do and just take it from there, because certainly Tom can do that, Tom Rainey and Jorge and Chris or Scott, any of these guys could figure out a way into that. So yeah, it was just kind of an experiment, and I'm still trying it.
Now, I've got a million questions, but you've already been super great with your time, and so just to sort of wrap up, then, what? How long are you on tour for, and where all are you headed across?
We start today here in Scottsdale. It's just 2 weeks, and this will be the first time I've played my own music in Boise, but I haven't played in most of these places, playing my own music in quite a while, other than touring with Julian, which we did a few years ago, and seemingly a lot of people missed out on that. But we go to Albuquerque tomorrow to play the Outpost. That show's sold out, apparently. And I haven't played the Outpost. I've never played my own music in Albuquerque, I don't think, but I played the old Outpost in the 90s with Vinnie Golia, when player-composer, one of my oldest friends. And then we go to Denver. I can't remember the name of the venue because I've never played there before. It's not Dazzle, that's all I know. Then on to Salt Lake City, someplace called something like the State Room, or I don't even, I don't know venue names, I'm sorry, generally, unless I've played there before. And this is another place I've never heard of. Then to Boise, then Seattle, some sort of theater there that we're not playing the Triple Doors, I usually do. down to Mississippi Studios in Portland. We played 2 shows in one night. Then the Arcata Theater in Arcata, California. The Freight and Salvage in Berkeley. Some theater on campus or something in San Diego, and then to the Lodge in Los Angeles.
So you're staying western half this
Yes,
time
it's a western run. Yeah. And previous to this, I've only been able to do 4 gigs in a row in the States.
Oh, so this is a heavy solo tour for you.
This is it. This is it. I don't think we'll ever be able to mount a tour of this size in the States. We did 4 gigs on the East Coast and then 4 gigs in sort of the Midwest, and that's a really bad way to tour because you can't make any money that way when you're renting a van and paying for hotels and all that stuff. But it was fun. It was fun to play, and then we did a European tour last year.
I was going to ask, is it easier to book tours like this in Europe? It seems like especially like I talked to Joey Burns from Calexico, and Calexico, they do pretty well here. They do all right.
No, they're big in Europe.
You see them playing these huge arenas. And,
well, that's like so many bands. It's like, the Dream Syndicate in Scandinavia or Green on Red, or these bands that only after a while play.
Hal Gelbsting, Giant Sand.
Yeah, he's another perfect example. I love Hal. Of artists who ended up mostly from that 80s group of that sort of those movements of the 80s. They built a real base, and it's continued to thrive overseas. Obviously, perhaps improvised music and jazz is bigger in Europe than it is in the United States.
Sure.
So, but not to get into that, the difference in touring over there is that the overhead is going to be lower.
Gotcha.
The fees may not be that much higher, but the overhead is lower because I don't go over there and rent a van. We take trains, or you fly from just these puddle jumper planes. You fly from city to city. The routing can be insane, and then almost without exception, the promoters put you up in a hotel and feed you. So that is a huge difference when you're an adult and you have expensive rent in New York, and you need to come home with some bread. It's much more expensive to tour here.
Yeah, that's so we're going to leave this interview with two uniquely American things. One is not appreciating art or artists, and and also finding a renewed interest in a non-renewable media.
Well, yeah, I mean, we'll figure it out. What I'm saying, it's I think that there's plenty of interesting culture happening in the States. It's just really hard. Certainly, living in New York, where I live. It's famous for improvisers. It's famous for culture in America. It has per capita more musicians than anywhere, but nobody's making money playing there.
Right.
That said, there's a lot going on, but in other cities in America, it's pretty impossible. But the point I'm making is that there's not just one place where music is happening.
Yeah.
There's music happening everywhere. It's just not always embraced by the community, the immediate community where these artists are living.
Well, I know doing this podcast made me take, much greater interest in the local music scene. And there are, you can find as many national or international musical movements that I might begin to become interested in. I can find somebody who's doing that, 10 or 15 minutes away in a club, or a little venue. It's a shame that it's almost like also if you compare the US to Europe as well, you can, everything is so much more compact. It feels like you can, here you
that's
have to.
very helpful. Certainly,
Yeah.
I take it you're from these parts.
I've lived here in Phoenix since I was 10, and then was from Southern California before that. So
okay, where I'm from, born and raised in Los Angeles, lived there over 50 years. My dad was from there. the West is vast. Mm-hmm. It's a challenge. That's why this tour is going to be so grueling because I'm trying not to take days off so we can go home with some bread after all the
so you're going
stuff
straight
we're
from
paying for.
Scottsdale to Albuquerque to
the Salt Lake City situation. We don't go quite all the way there, and then we do have a night off then, and we have a night off before the San Diego gig.
That's rough. That's a lot of miles.
Yeah, but fortunately, all four of us like driving.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, seriously. But it's going to be a lot of time in the old van there. It's a cool van.
Yeah.
Rented it yesterday.
So, okay, two last questions. Yeah. One is more of just a kind of jokey, hacky joke. Tweety doesn't make everybody move to Chicago?
Well, when I joined the band, everyone lived in Chicago except for Pat and me with the two new guys. And then Pat moved there. Mm-hmm. But I didn't ever want to move to Chicago.
No.
And he didn't ask me to.
Oh, too cold?
No. I was, I was in a relationship in Los Angeles, and even when that ended, I didn't really want to leave to live in Chicago. I've always wanted to live in New York since the 70s. And so without going into my whole personal life trajectory, it just became impossible to move to New York at one point early on when I was thinking of doing it. And then after some other wrinkles in my personal life that were pretty much related to being in Los Angeles changed, I met my wife who was living in New York, and I moved.
That sounds like the short version. Well,
and it's for me, and I don't own a car anymore, which I love.
Oh, that's great.
And
I fantasize about that.
And certainly I didn't move. I mean, I have so many musician friends there, and I've certainly looked, like much of the world has, to New York for a certain kind of inspiration or direction or
sure.
whatever, and particularly in the improvised music world. And it's way more vast and deeper than I even knew.
Oh, wow.
And I'm very grateful to even participate at all in that community there. And I know it's crazy, but it appeals to me. It's my kind of place. And so, when we come west, whoa, it's much harder to get from place to place. That's for sure.
And there's just so much empty space between too, right?
But I have to say, as Tom Rainey and I were just driving from Los Angeles yesterday after picking up the van. He flew into Los Angeles. We drove here yesterday, and just noting how much he's from California, so is Julian, but how much he was appreciating being able to get away and being in the van and just looking at the space. I mean, it just feels really good because certainly it's a very compressed, shall we say, existence in New York, which can be really overwhelming if one's used to space. But we're not used to space anymore, so when we are confronted with space, well, it's pretty exhilarating, and certainly the beauty of it's not lost on us, is, I guess, what I'm trying to say.
Oh, well, that's cool. That's cool. Nels, thank you so much for taking the time. It was a thrill to talk to you. And
thanks for listening. I mean, seriously, we could all just stay home.
Yeah.
Or just throw jam sessions for each other or something. But if people don't listen, it seems kind of pointless. But beyond that, it's like when you are listening in a concert setting, you're affecting the music, and you're part of the chemistry. So, I don't take that for granted. Is all I'm saying.
Well, I've never seen you solo before, or in at least in a jazz setting live before. So I'm looking forward to it tonight.
And did they hook you up? Do you have a ticket?
Yeah, I'm all set.
Okay, good.
Thanks so much.
I'll see you later then.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Yeah.
All right, that's it. That's the show. Thank you again so much for listening. Thank you to my guest, Nels Cline, who, again, was just one of the nicest dudes ever. He said to, stay in touch. And I mentioned briefly after we'd finished talking that there were some of his albums that I'd listened to that I really enjoyed and wanted to get physical copies of, but that gone out of print. And he's like, "Oh, just hit me up if I have some copies back at my place in New York. I'll send them out to you." And just